experience dealing with the virus?
I feel great now. It's like nothing ever happened. I was very, very fortunate in that for me, I had a stuffy nose for like 2 days. That was the extent of it. I didn't lose taste or smell or anything like that. I didn't have a fever. So I just happened to be, I don't know how rare or common it is, but for me, it was just my case that I was fine.
Yeah. And you're taking on someone that is sort of taking the MMA world by storm, and a lot of people are building a lot of hype behind this guy. And uh, you've spoken in many interviews how you kind of felt a little bit disrespected that they're already talking about a future opponent beyond this fight. Um, Now that the bout's a lot closer, how do you feel? Do you still feel that way, or has that sort of feeling dialed down and you're more focused on the bout itself?
I'm focused on the bout, but I still feel that, right? Because it's one thing if you want to name names for after, because guys have done that before, or even try to say I want to fight, really often, and try to say like, oh, if I could get another one in 2 months. But he's naming names and dates and trying to like literally set up his next few fights. So that kind of rubs me the wrong way.
Yeah, for sure. By the way, have you gotten a chance to see him throughout fight week?
Yeah, we passed each other in the hallway earlier today, and I mean it was pretty quick. He tried to like I think he was trying to talk trash to me. I think he just kept saying like don't talk too much. And I was kind of like, yeah, okay, like we're fighting Saturday, so we're not going to do anything now because I want to make money. I don't know what his deal is, and not only that, but I don't think it's like a very cool thing to like flex when you got, a bunch of your friends with you and stuff. Like I had one guy with me, he had a bunch of guys with him, but it's like, dude, like I get it. You don't have to like me, I don't have to like you, but let's just save it for the cage.
Right. And we've seen a lot of fighters, compete in two weight classes, right? Usually lightweight and welterweight, maybe light heavyweight and heavyweight, and different weight classes like that. But not often do we see a guy that goes back and forth between welterweight and middleweight. Now that you got to see him, through fight week, what do you make of his size? Like, do you see him as a middleweight?
He's got the height of most middleweights, but he's really skinny. Like he is not that thick of a guy. So if nothing else, I don't understand how he and I'm sure he believes it, how he believes that he's gonna put his hands on me and be able to do anything. Like he doesn't look big enough, But he's probably pretty fast because he's gonna be lighter. His technique isn't bad at all, but you still got to have some kind of power to do anything, especially in grappling. And I'm a pretty strong grappler myself, so I don't think this is the weight class for him.
Right. That's what I was going to ask you. Like, usually in boxing and striking sports, maybe weight might not be as important, but grappling obviously is something that's very important. We know he's a grappler. We know you have very serious grappling skills as well. Do you kind of look at the size advantage that you have, and kind of does it give you a little bit of confidence?
Oh yeah, it gives me a little bit of confidence, but even besides all that, I'm confident in everything. I have way more experience. I have way more options as to how I can finish the fight, and I think he likes to talk about me talking a lot. Really, I haven't said anything bad about him. He's just angry for no reason. But for me, it's like, dude, you're looking past me. Like you're the one that needs to, put some respect on my name and acknowledge when you're fighting a guy that has 40 plus fights, might be more than a handful.
For sure. And lastly, I mean, there's no doubt that he's looked impressive in his UFC run. But one fight was against a newcomer. The other guy had a losing record in the UFC. You're obviously a veteran. You've been around for the game a long time. You fought some of the best at 185. Do you feel like perhaps he's being a little bit too overhyped? Do you think like maybe those wins that he had at that impressive sort of start that he's had in the UFC is a little deceiving, given the fact that the quality of his opponents?
Oh, look, I've said it in many, many interviews. Do I think he's overhyped? For sure. However, you got a guy that, looks like another guy that's a champion, kind of talks like him and fights like him. And I think he's probably got the record for like quickest turnaround, two victories in the UFC, right? So why wouldn't you push that guy, especially right now? Like if I'm Dana White in the UFC, I'm doing the exact same thing. So I don't, blame him for that or anything. But what I do take issue with again is trying to put names and dates on paper before you have your first fight. So like for him trying to set all this other stuff up and he's talking about other people, talking about the Diaz brothers, I'm only focused on him. So I think that's going to be the real issue that I have with him.
For sure. All right, man. Well, best of luck this weekend. Looking forward to the fight.
Thanks.
We'll go next to Pablo Santamaria with Noti MMA Ecuador.
Hi, Gerald. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
How are you?
Good. How you doing, man?
Everything's okay. Thanks for asking. The first thing I want to ask you is if you feel kind of disrespect because of him facing Demian Maya in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, I took that as disrespectful. Yeah, I've said that in many interviews. I'm going to try to make him pay for that on September 19th.
And who do you blame of that, Khamzat or the UFC?
Well, I don't blame anybody. I think, they're trying to push a guy that's an undefeated young prospect. They want to get the most out of him. And I've said it before, I do the same thing, but, he just happened to stumble across the wrong guy to do that with.
I get it. You already fought under these circumstances on UFC 250. There was any different on this training camp?
It wasn't that much different from my other fights that were, just before this. So for me, I'm used to it.
Okay, and what's your prediction for the fight?
Well, I'd like to submit him and get the new record, but who knows? I just know I'm going to get a finish.
Okay, thank you very much, Gerald, and good luck on Saturday.
We'll go next to Gabriel Gonzalez with Cageside Press.
Hey, Gerald. I saw your interview with ESPN and you said a line that stuck with me. You said, "You're never going to be the blue chip prospect, but you can be the miracle on ice. You can be Cinderella Man." When did you reach that point in your mindset? Because I think a lot of people would just be carrying not the chip, but the whole mountain on their shoulder with the circumstances of this fight.
I mean, I pretty much had that mindset for a while now, right? Because it's been a long, long time since I've had, not that many losses. We're talking probably, I think 2010, I think I had 4 losses at that point. Maybe you could have considered me a prospect, but since then, I usually it goes my way, but sometimes it doesn't. When you fight that much, it happens. So I've always understood that, for me, it's going to be if I work hard enough and I really want it enough, people aren't going to look at me and expect me to be the next big thing. I got to go out there and prove it.
How do you tune out a lot of the emotion? Because, it's very easy to get in there. You really just want to, I don't want to say get reckless, but you want to go out there and maybe just swing for the fences rather than execute a game plan just to do the damage because, they're double booking him and everything. How do you not let yourself fall into that?
Experience, age doesn't hurt either. Like I'm not old, but I'm not like a super young man either. And I've fought like 45 times, man. If I can't figure out how to keep my emotions in check now, it's not going to happen.
It's no secret he's going to be looking to get this to the ground. How did you prepare for that? Do you bring in guys to prepare for him? What do you do?
I mean, you always want to train to give a look of the guy that you're fighting, but remember, he's got to go where I'm most dangerous. I got 23 submission wins. I'm tied for the most submissions in the UFC. So if he wants to take me down and make the fight as hard as he possibly can for himself, I'm all about that.
There's a lot of attention on him, but for yourself, what do you most want to show in this fight?
I don't really care what I show. I just want to win.
Got it. Thank you, Gerald.
Thank you.
We'll go next to Damon Martin with MMA Fighting. Your line is open.
Hey, Gerald, this is obviously a loaded question, but I'm going to ask it anyways, which is, have you been impressed by what you've seen out of Khamzat in terms of the UFC, or how much video you've seen on him leading into this fight? Have you been impressed by what you've seen?
I mean, he's not bad, right? Like he wins all his fights. They're pretty quick. It's kind of hard to tell with someone who's that new because they don't give him any sort of resistance, right? All of his fights, he's looked great, but it's easy to look great against guys that either aren't good at what you do or that are way smaller than you and aren't good at what you do. You know what I mean? So most of his fights that I've seen, he's usually the bigger man. His one UFC fight, he did move up. He fought a guy who's, he's a slugger and, not much of a ground guy. So he had a big advantage there. So I wouldn't say he's impressive, but it's not like he's not a good fighter. And I expect him to be a good fighter.
And when you look at the matchup, on paper, he's the young guy, the undefeated guy, but he hasn't been tested. As you mentioned, most of his fights have kind of been blowouts. You've been to those wars, you've seen that, you understand what it's like to go through a loss and come back from that and get a big win. How much does that play a factor in this fight if he does get in those deep waters where it goes in the second round or the third round, or he goes for a submission, doesn't get it, or he starts gassing himself out with punches? Like, these are all things we really haven't seen from him yet.
Right. I think it helps a lot. I mean, experience is going to play a big role. And I've been in situations where I've tried to go for stuff and it doesn't work, or I, lose part of a fight and then I come back. He's never had to handle that mentally. And as much as he can prepare himself for it, it's different when you're in there.
You mentioned it earlier, the little fight week, I won't say altercation, but like the Russia, like when you had that kind of experience, like the mental warfare side of things, are you able to just kind of laugh that off? Do you just kind of like shake your head and say, why are we doing this on fight week? Because we've seen that a million times, and there are real head games. We've seen some guys absolutely get affected by it.
Yeah, I don't really care. You know what I mean? Like I said, I don't think I've actually said anything like bad about him. So I don't know why he was so upset, or if he thinks that makes him look like a tough guy or whatever. But again, it's water off my back. I don't really care what he's going to say, because we have a contract in place that says on Saturday night they're going to lock that cage door and we get to figure it out ourselves.
And last question, Gerald. I know this is not to do with your fight, and I know you're a little biased in this question. The main event this weekend, Tyron Woodley against Colby Covington. Tyron's a training partner of yours, so I'm not going to ask you to pick against him, but can you kind of give us an idea? I know he wasn't in camp with you guys for this fight, but kind of give me an idea what you expect out of this fight, knowing Tyron like you do.
I expect Colby to be left in the bloody pile in the middle of the cage. That's what I expect.
Thanks, Gerald.
Thank you.
We'll take our final question from Jeffrey Harris with 411 Mania MMA.
Hello, Gerald. Good afternoon. Thank you for the time.
What's up?
So this quarantine period is nutty enough as it is, but I'm just curious, what's it like to be training and fighting during a time like this, during this whole sort of COVID era? Does it give you something to focus on? It's a
little more annoying.
Okay.
Well,
But is it a good distraction to be fighting at a time like this? I'm just curious from your perspective.
I mean, I don't really look at it as a distraction necessarily. And I mean, it's affecting everybody differently, right? I live in a decently populated area, but I'm not like in New York or something where it got hit really hard. So for me, luckily, it hasn't affected me and my family too much. And I mean, outside of the normal regulations that everyone's following, there's been like, we had to shut down the gym for a little bit, but it hasn't been much of a difference for me.
I don't know if you've seen the betting odds for this fight, but DraftKings has you at plus 360 and Khamzat at minus 500. Do you think that maybe puts more pressure on him and less on you for this fight?
He probably doesn't gamble or understand what that is, so I doubt it. We've signed a contract. We know what numbers we're getting, to show up and win. So that doesn't really affect anything. Like, we all already know he's the big favorite. So I doubt that has any effect on him. They probably groomed him up to this point to feel like he's unstoppable, like he should be that guy. So, if anything else, it's just going to make me laugh harder when all these bookies figure out that they were way off on those numbers.
So I think this is your third fight this year, right? Would you want to make it a fourth time this year? Do you want to stay active for 2020?
I mean, we'll see what happens after this fight. I'm not going to overlook anyone like my opponent. I'm going to go in there. I'm going to fight my hardest. And if I'm still healthy and hungry and I want to do it, then I'm all for it. If not, we're getting close to the end. I could probably sneak another one in December if everything goes according to plan. But, who knows? We'll have to figure that out after the 19th.
Thank you, Gerald, and good luck on this matchup.
Thanks.
All right. Thank you very much, Gerald. You're all set.